Russia and Europe seem to be edging towards a bigger war, a bitter war, a war that threatens to engulf the entire European continent. And time for NATO seems to be running out. First, have a look at these visuals. These are from today itself. While Donald Trump delivered sermons and issued warnings from New York, Russia seems to be quietly capturing more and more territory from Ukraine. The entire eastern front of Ukraine is crumbling faster than the American president can get his European allies to prepare against the Russian threat. But will that be enough? That's a question only the NATO can answer. Already, Baltic nations are fortifying their defenses against alleged Russian drone threats. And today itself, Russia has said that they have captured a large part of the northeastern Ukrainian city of Kupiansk. Already, Russia controls nearly 20% of Ukrainian territory, 20% nearly. And they plan to advance much deeper into the Kharkiv region. Europe is watching in horror, biding their time in a way, wondering if they are next. From the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, countries bordering Russia, Belarus, Ukraine are dealing with the spillover from the Russia-Ukraine war. Staring at the brink, it seems, of a wider and more intense war between Russia and the NATO. Across different parts of the continent, preparation for the potential conflict seems to be underway. Estonia has started expanding fortifications on its border with Russia. Authorities there are constructing fences, anti-tank barriers, and underground bunkers. Officials say these steps are necessary to guard against potential escalation. And the preparation goes far beyond Estonia, by the way. In Germany, its armed forces are planning on how to treat as many as 1,000 injured troops per day should a large-scale conflict between NATO and Russia break out. The German armed forces are closely monitoring the Russia-Ukraine war and incorporating lessons that can help them constantly adapt their medical training. Listen to this.
Können wir unseren Frieden nur
Given the ongoing acute threat situation, we can only maintain our peace through credible deterrence. Credible deterrence requires readiness. I just mentioned that readiness requires equipment, personnel, training, and proper practice.
Richtig. Üben, üben, üben.
And in bordering Poland, the country is working towards training every adult male for war. While Norway, that shares a nearly 200-kilometer border with Russia, is looking to restore old military bunkers and has made it mandatory for all new buildings to include bomb shelters. Tensions between Russia and the NATO continuing to simmer. Just earlier today, Spain's defense minister's plane suffered GPS interference while flying over Russian territory. And over the past few weeks, there have been a series of Russian incursions into NATO airspace, including when nearly 20 Russian drones entered Polish airspace, an incident that Estonia said revealed dangerous gaps in NATO's air defenses.
When we talk about the lower altitude detection capabilities, then definitely all the NATO countries have gaps there. We've seen that also in the Polish incident. Most of the drones were not detected, and this is a real gap we have to solve.
Defense ministers from NATO's eastern flank are expected to meet this Friday to discuss a joint plan for a so-called drone wall along the bloc's border with Russia and Belarus, a drone wall. Political leaders are reinforcing the need for readiness. Finland's president, meanwhile, has said that security guarantees for Ukraine require readiness to fight Russia, adding that the NATO must maintain a credible deterrence. In a post on social media, US President Donald Trump said he believes Ukraine, with the support of the European Union and the NATO, can win back all of the territory Russia has taken since the war started. The Kremlin has now rejected those claims. Officials in Moscow insisted Ukraine cannot win back lost ground, dismissing Western optimism as misguided and defending the war as strategic rather than aimless. And with Russia gaining more ground in Ukraine and NATO reinforcing its preparations for a wider conflict, it seems the question for Europe is not whether the tensions will persist, but whether they are actually prepared for the battle. Where do the drug lords live? A rhetorical question with no definite answer, it seems. But the Colombian president seems to be sure about the location, which according to him is next to Donald Trump's Miami residence. Let's break this down for you. In a bold and fiery statement, Petro has taken direct aim at the U.S. military strikes against Venezuelan boats in the Caribbean. He has accused the U.S. of targeting the wrong people. He claims that the real drug traffickers are not the poor fishermen struggling on the boats, but the powerful elite living in the world's wealthiest cities, like Miami, where Petro boldly suggests drug traffickers are even neighbors to Trump himself. That statement on your screen. In fact, the stakes got higher when Petro, during his speech at the UN General Assembly, escalated his criticism of the US and condemned its military strikes in the Caribbean. Not just that, he accused President Trump of turning poverty and migration into crimes. Not stopping there, he also called for a criminal probe into the actions of his US counterpart. Listen to this.
A criminal process should be initiated against those officials from the United States, including the highest-ranking official who gave the order, President Trump, who allowed rifles to be fired at young people who simply wanted to escape poverty.
That's not all. The remarks coming just days after the Venezuelan president turned up the heat on Washington. He taunted Trump's administration over the hypocrisy of drug accusations. Maduro blasted Washington's moral authority and asked them to look for drugs in their own turf and not in Venezuela.
If you want to find marijuana, look in the U.S., where they produce super synthetic marijuana, and it's legal, both production and consumption. What can they say about Venezuela? They have no moral ground. In Venezuela, it remains illegal and will stay illegal. We will never fall for the stupid trend of legalizing any drug.
Adding fuel to the fire, Maduro revealed that Venezuela is now drafting constitutional decrees to defend its sovereignty against potential U.S. military action. He accused the Trump administration of using drug trafficking as a pretext for military intervention, further worsening the tensions. And as Petro and Maduro stand united in defiance, Trump is caught in this geopolitical crossfire, with the policies now under fierce scrutiny from two South American leaders. The clash over the drug trade is no longer just about boats in the Caribbean. It's also about the fight for sovereignty and introspection. A major shift in global trade is unfolding. China has opened a direct Arctic shipping route to Europe, cutting travel time in half and placing Beijing one step ahead in the race for control of international commerce. The Chinese container ship is leading the way, operated by a Chinese company known as Sea Legend in English. The vessel is sailing from a point near Shanghai to Felixstowe in eastern England. On board are nearly 5,000 containers. And what makes this journey historic is its course, an Arctic passage that avoids the Indian Ocean, the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. This route slashes the usual 40-day journey to just 18 days. Beijing calling it a new era in shipping, and the message is clear. China intends to rewrite the rules of maritime trade. The voyage not only shortens delivery times, but can also potentially strengthen economic and security ties with Russia, as the path runs entirely within Chinese and Russian-controlled waters. Unlike the Suez Canal, in fact, the Strait of Hormuz, or the strait connecting the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean, the Arctic route is far from US naval influence. Further made lucrative for countries eager to avoid disruptions from conflicts in West Asia or attacks by the Houthis in the Red Sea. But the Arctic route has its own set of limits. Melting ice has made it usable during summer months with the help of icebreakers, but traffic is modest as compared to the southern sea lanes. And while the Suez Canal handles over 20,000 ships each year, the Arctic currently sees only a few hundred. Even so, the demand is rising. Russia already uses the route to send oil and natural gas eastward, and now China is proving it can also move container cargo westward just as effectively. From England, the Chinese vessel Istanbul Bridge will continue to sail towards Rotterdam in the Netherlands, Hamburg in Germany, and finally to a part in Poland, underlining Beijing's strategy to link its ports directly with Europe's biggest trade hubs. And without reliance on other sea routes, just for context, the fastest non-stop sea route between China and Europe, linking Shanghai to a port in Germany, takes 26 days. The Arctic path trimming that by more than a week, giving China a major edge. In the last decade, Arctic voyages have risen from a handful to as many as 100 a year. And that number is only expected to grow further. China's new shipping route signaling more than just efficiency, it signals strategy. By turning the ice into opportunity, Beijing is steadily outmaneuvering its competitors on the world's trade map. The question also is which country will be next to follow. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.